Okay, here's our initial tableau. And the thing that's different this time is right here. Look at that last column. In the last column, we've got a negative 60 right here. We've never seen that before. This is a maximization problem. And the reason for this is because one of those constraints was not standard. So this is telling us that we're not in the feasible region due to this negative 60. That's what we have. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over here and find one of these numbers that are negative. So you're going to look at these negative coefficients in this row. This becomes our pivot row. So we look at these negative coefficients. Now what we're going to do is form some ratios. Before, our ratios were over here, like in the K column. Now they're going to be down here. And we're going to take, and I'm going to write some formulas. I'm going to write equals C5 divided by C4. So that's the ratio of the objective function coefficients, which are in the last row, to these coefficients that are in your pivot row. Okay? And then I'm just going to drag that over to these two here. Only those two, because these are the only negative coefficients that I have. Now what I'm going to do is choose the largest of these three values. They're all positive, so the largest one is 120. And this tells me that this will become my indicator. So I'm going to color that. All right. Now what I should have done also at the beginning before I get into any of this stuff is copy and paste. So let me do that right now. So I'm going to copy and I'm going to leave an extra space. Now if you copy and paste at the beginning, before we would always leave one kind of row at least. Now leave two, because we're going to be doing these other calculations here. And let me do edit. Hello? I guess. Okay. Did I do the paste special yet? No, edit, paste special, values only. All right, so now we're in business here. Okay, so this is our pivot. We want that to be a 1, so let's go ahead and write that down here. So I'm going to take, basically to make that a 1, I can take row 3, and actually, let me do negative row 3. I'll just multiply it by negative 1, if it lets me. Well, let me try that again. Negative row 3. There you go. Okay, this row, I want to make this 1 a 0, so I'll take row 1 plus row 3. I want to make the 10 a 0, so I'll take row 2 plus 10 row 3s. And then I want to make the negative 120 a 0, so let's see. I got to be careful here. They're the same thing. So I'm going to take row 4 minus 120 row 3s. I hope that works. And let me run these ones through. So this one's going to be equal to C2 plus C4. I'll drag it here in a second. I'm just going to keep rolling. Equals C3 plus 10 of the C4s. Okay. This one's going to be equal to negative 1 times C4. And this one's going to be equal to C5 minus 120 C4s. All right, so that's good. Now I'm just going to copy and drag all those since I wrote one for each one. Okay. So good. Oh, and what I also need to do is X1 came into play for S3, right? So let's put that in there. So that's where we're at this point. Now, are we in the feasible region yet? The answer is no. I still have one of these negative values here. So I'm not quite even in the feasible region yet. So let me go ahead and copy skip 2 rows, and I'll do paste. Special values only. Alright, so that's where I'm at here right now. Okay, obviously that negative 100 needs to be accounted for. I've got to get into the feasible region, and I'm not there yet. I have 2 negative coefficients in that row. Let me write the kind of ratios or fractions. So I'm going to take equals D12, I think, that 80, and divide by D10, which is the negative 6. And I'm going to do the same thing to the column right beside it, because those are the only 2 columns that have a negative coefficient in that row. Whoops, and let me undo that. I want to drag this direction. There you go. And I choose the largest of those 2 numbers, but they're both negative. So the largest one is the least negative, which means this will be my pivot. So let me mark my pivot. And I want to make that a 1, everything else is 0, and we'll see where we go from there. So here it looks like what I want to do in row 2 is divide it by negative 6, and we'll do that. Row 1's fine. Row 3, I have a 1 in it. I need to make that a 0, so let me take 6 row 3's plus row 2. That should zero that out. I got to make my 80. So let's do 6 row 4's plus 80 row 2's. And let me write all those things, and hopefully that looks good. So let me go to here. So I'm going to do equals C10, I think, divided by negative 6. And I'll drag that across in a second. Equals 6 times C11 plus C10. And then finally equals 6 times C12 plus 80 times C10. I'm going to drag just these ones that I wrote the formulas for across. Boom. So I got that. And I need to remember x sub 2 came into play for s sub 2. So s sub 2 is kicked out, x sub 2 now has a positive value. So let's evaluate where we're at so far here. And what we'll see is, look, over here in the last column, no more negative numbers. We're in the feasible region. That's cool. We're not violating any constraints anymore. As we look into here now, it's traditional. It's a regular standard max now. I look at my indicators, which are everything in the last row underneath x sub 1, x sub 2, x sub 3, s sub 1, s sub 2, and s sub 3. None of them are negative. So not only did I get into the feasible region finally, I'm actually at the optimal position. That sometimes will happen. Now let's suppose that that wasn't the case, that I get rid of all these negatives in the J column, okay? And when I do, I'm into the feasible region, but I still have a negative indicator. Then you would go about it the way you always have with a max problem. Then you go over here to the K column, form your ratios of, the J stuff to the, most negative indicator column, and see which one you kick in. And then you just go about it. The only thing I do want to check here real quickly is, here's my S1 intersection. It's a 1, so that row's fine. My X2's a 1, that's fine. My X1's a 6, so I need to really work on this one. And down here, look at the 6 underneath the Z. So I have one more step, and then we'll evaluate, and we'll be good. So I'm going to edit, copy. I can just skip one row now. I don't need to do the 2. Edit, paste, special values only. And I need row 3 to be divided by 6 and row 4 to be divided by 6. And then we'll be in there. So let's do that. So I get C18 divided by 6 and equals C19, I think it is, divided by 6. And I'll drag those two across, and then we'll write everything that we know. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to figure out what x sub 1 is equal to, x sub 2 what it's equal to, x sub 3 what it's equal to, s sub 1 a slack variable, s sub 2 is a slack variable, s sub 3 is a surplus variable, and my max z, let's see what it's equal to, make that capital, there we go. So my x sub 1 will be equal to 43 1/3. X sub 2 is going to be equal to 16 2/3. X sub 3 is 0, it's not included. S sub 1 is equal to 40. S sub 2 is 0. S sub 3 is 0. And my max z is equal to 5,866 2/3. So I have all those things right there. Let's highlight that. And we'll do it in a light green, bold it out, and I'll enclose it. Okay, we're done.